So we're just setting a couple of things up here. Before we begin, can I just get a bit of a show of hands? Who here has played this version of Killer Instinct? Yep, cool. Oh, that's awesome. Who's played the original Killer Instinct? Maybe back in the day in the night. Whoa, yeah. Expectations. Who here has never played a fighting game whatsoever? Oh, not one? Really? Nobody? Have you played a fighting game before? Wow, nobody's lying. Nobody's never played a fighting game before. Well, that's awesome. I need to do an introduction then. That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Alrighty. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you remember the 90s? Take a seat, Jed. Yeah? Do you remember this guy? Yeah. What about this girl? This guy? Of course. Do you remember the video game arcade? Yeah? Or what I like to call the scene of the first loudness war. No kidding. I mean, as a sound designer back in the day working on arcade games, it was your job to make as much noise as possible. Because you had to lure any punter who was close and within earshot over to your machine because they had a shiny little quarter in their pocket, yeah? And that was the goal. It was to try and bring people over. Now, Killer Instinct was one of these loud games. I mean, most of you played it before. You'll know. Now, Killer Instinct was developed by Rareware in the UK. They're still going today. But between 1991 and 2006, Rare released some of the most iconic video games of all time. An incredible effort for any studio. Now, Rare used revolutionary CGI technology to make Killer Instinct look really, really good. Back in the day, back in the 90s, magazines described these visuals as movie-like. Yeah? Now, not only did Killer Instinct look really good, but Killer Instinct sounded really good. The two sound guys back in Rare, back in the day, were Robin Beanland and Graham Norgate. Now, their approach was to make Killer Instinct sound like something you would hear on the TV or in a movie. Now, this modern sound, which was modern at the time, really helped to lure those punters over with the shiny quarter in their pocket. The arcade machine, it shook with the noises of the punches and kicks, and it shook with the sound of this guy. Maybe you guys heard that one this morning, yeah? So anyway, in 2012, late 2012, Microsoft brought us on to develop a new Killer Instinct as a launch title for the Xbox One. Now, after a 17-year hiatus and a huge fan base, it was clear that we had a bit of a challenge ahead of us, right? So how do you modernize the sound of a classic 90s fighting game?
So we think that car design is fascinating. It's fascinating because every year they come up with a new model. Something fresh, something unique, something new. You want to buy that car on the right. It's always different every year, but it retains the essence of the brand and of the BMW M3 that we have here. So imagine that KI1 was the car on the left. And when Microsoft approached us and asked us to revive Killer Instinct in 2013, we had to imagine the car on the right. And to do so, we thought that one of the first things that we had to update, to modernize, was the announcer. So Chris Sutherland, who was the producer on Killer Instinct, gave his voice to the announcer, and he still works there today. So KI wouldn't be KI without the voice of Chris Sutherland. So we recorded him twice We got two big Pro Tools sessions, and it was very difficult to match the same performance. His voice actually changed during those 17 years. So what was fantastic is that Rob in Finland sent us the backup tapes from the original Killer Instinct. So he transferred those DAT tapes, the digital tapes, to Pro Tools sessions. He sent them to us, and we could actually hear the original recordings of Chris when he was recording in '94, and try to match the same performance, and not try to match the process ones. So there was still one problem. The iconic lines like the combo breaker and the ultra, it was almost impossible to match the same performance. What we did was actually just to grab those takes from the original recordings, since we had them unprocessed. And we just had to process them. And back in the day, Robin used a noisy Behringer Composer MDX 2100 chained by an Ensoniq DP4. That's the Behringer that you see at the top and the Ensoniq at the back, at the bottom. But today, with Pro Tools, we just use the plugins. We pitched it down 2.5 semitones. We use the Renaissance compressor and the waves doubler. And we managed to find something that was really close. So next you're going to hear an ABC test of the announcer, where you hear first the original recording, and then the 2013 version, followed by the 1994 version that was recorded out of the Nintendo 64. So that's what it sounded like.
Triple combo, triple combo, triple combo, killer combo, killer combo, killer combo, combo breaker, combo breaker, combo breaker. Game over, game over, game over.
So, as arcade sound designers back in the day, our goal was to attract the crowd, as Mick mentioned, to our arcade machine and make them spend their last coins that they had. And we thought that to attract the crowd like they used to do in the arcades back in the days, the impacts were one of the biggest things you could hear after the announcer. So in order to bring them back in 2013, make some really interesting impacts, we started recording, banging things around. And this started in the kitchen of Double Helix, our studio. And we got about 1,700 takes, lots of different things. And some of the best ones actually came from hitting that black leather chair that you see in the back with a racket tennis racket. A ping pong racket. Then we took all those takes, we processed them, tried to bring a little bit of crunch. We used the Filter Freak from the Sound Toys, and some compressors like the C4, and a denoiser from the RX Advanced to remove all that noise. And then we got some interesting materials. You're going to hear now the original recordings straight from this kitchen, but I had to compress them, otherwise you would only hear a little and the processed version after. All right. So from those hundreds of takes, we had to categorize them into low, medium, and heavy for the game. And this is what it sounds like for the low impacts. All right, we had to create the medium ones and the heavy ones. The distinction between those categories is not that big. We tried really to make a really big difference between the low and the heavy ones, but then after it didn't feel right when you use the low impacts. But that was okay because the designers added new features to the game as we were developing it. And one of them was the shadow moves. And shadow moves, for the ones who are not familiar with it, are basically superpowers for the characters that they can trigger at any time of the game when they have their meters filled. And so we created new impacts for it. That's what it sounded like. So far we can go with that. And the designers created new impacts. Well, that was for the last hit of the combo. And it basically launches the opponent in the air. So we had to come up with new sounds for that. And this is what it sounded like. All right. So one of the most satisfying moments in the game, in my opinion, is when you take the opponent and throw it on the ground. It creates this blast that spreads dust and debris. And we thought it was a great opportunity to use slapback echoes that quickly move from the front speaker to the back. Because the stage is in 2D, it's a 2D plane. It's a 3D game, but it's a 2D plane. So we want to create that third dimension that surrounds the player. All right. So it gives a little bit of depth to the stage, and this is an example of orchid slapback echo. So here it sounds quite processed. We could tell a little bit of story with those sounds because the jaguar is a symbol of orchid. She uses that as a secret weapon, sort of. So we use cougar sounds to create those slapback echoes that quickly move from the front speakers to the back. And for Sedira, for example, who is the spider queen, we used female whispers. For Spinal, who is the skeleton, creepy dude, we used monster growls, etc. For Thunder, it's obviously thunderclaps. So just to try to tell a little bit of story. So that stereo sound that you heard here is actually separated into two mono sound in the game for the left side and the right side. And they all go through silences. So the duration of those silences changes in real time in the game. In this example, the two characters are on the left side of the screen, so when the impact happens, the silence for the right side, for the right slapback echo, is bigger than the left one, which creates a delay in the right slapback echo, which means it happens quicker on the left and after on the right, which helps to localize the character and gives a little bit of interactivity. Now, arcades were very loud. There was a lot of music, a lot of people yelling around. And good audio feedback was crucial for the players. We wanted them, because the first time they came to the arcade machine, they started to play. We want them to stay there and keep investing coins, right? That was the arcade time. So in order for them to enjoy the game, they need to have audio feedback. It's very crucial. So instead of going with like cliche whooshes when we play, doing sort of thing, it wouldn't cut through the mix. So instead of that, we amplified all the transients of any sound. We added impacts to every whooshes. And in this example here that you're going to hear, it's just like punches and kicks for a character. Let's see what it sounds like. Now, fighting game players don't only need to know when a sound happened. This is great. It cuts through the mix. But players also need to know which sound was triggered. And to do so, we think that tonalities is something that works very well. Like in the old games. Old game had that particularity because they're easy to detect and remember. So we're going to do a little test here. So the first, try to remember what was the game from the first sound here. Oh, that was very quick. Hope you were fast. Now let's try the second one. The third one. It's like, how fast did it take for you to remember when you heard the first few milliseconds of that sound? It's very quick, right? They're very iconic, but that's because they were tonal. So we did the same thing with Killer Instinct. It's a little bit less straightforward, but this is what ended up in the game with Orchid. Try to hear those tonalities. So yeah, it's very punchy, it's very tonal, and you can detect those sounds very quickly. And that's what we wanted to give to the fighting game players. So those sounds, all those electrical sounds and sparks, what could we make them from? Well, what about Tesla coil? Now, what would you use for the sticky sound of web? For Sedira, Sedira is a spider queen. She throws web everywhere on the stage. Sticky sounds, tonalities. What about duct tape? What about that? Now, this is what it sounded like in the game when it's mixed with other sounds. Okay, so that was Sedira. But Glacius is a very interesting character, one of my favorite in the game. He's an alien, and he doesn't have a mouth. So how would you create the wide range of the emotions with vocalizations? That was a very tricky one. But we experimented, and we thought that we could use something that we call the reverse larynx technique, which basically you inhale air through your larynx, and it vibrates your vocal cord in a very non-human way, and it creates those whooshes, those screeches, like that. So that was the voice for Glacius. So he doesn't have a mouth, but he can breathe on Earth. And he uses gills. So I tried to find fish in the Union, but I couldn't find any. So instead, We used my colleague's iron that is here. You know, the iron they used for your dress, your shirts. And this is what it sounded like for an alien breathing on Earth. Now, Glacius reacts differently to gravity on Earth. You see him, he's very slow when he moves. And to give that sensation, without going into the electronic sound world, we used very organic sound, the elastic band. So you can create things that work. Because this elastic band, I can stretch it, and I can control the pitch of it. So you do things like that. So you can raise the pitch up or bend it down. And you can, after that, once it's Pro Tools, you can process it, you can slow it down even further, pitch it down, you can reverse it, add a little bit of distortion. And when I did in the game, it could sound like that. So there's another character that I really like, Spinal, the skeleton. Spinal is very interesting because he has traveled all around the world with a ship. And he learned many different languages. So in the game, his words that he uses for his attacks are actually made of 5 different languages. There's Spanish, when he says espada, which means sword. There's Greek. He says tromos, which means terror. And there's also Italian, there's Indonesian, and there's also Swedish. And that's something that we put as well in the music. All the lyrics were recorded in Swedish in Sweden. And this is an example of where we recorded it.
Man, it's really cool, like, recording Vikings. Yeah, thank you. Clap for the Vikings. Everybody clap for the Vikings. Of course, the most difficult thing about working with Vikings is trying to get them sober to actually do something, right? So, excuse me there. I see you, like, taking photos and things. I'm wondering if I can ask you very quickly, in a few couple of words, what music is to you. Wrong person? Emotion?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Hey, man. Swedish, right? Yeah, Vikings, yeah. So can I ask you in a few short words what music means to you? Emotion, yeah, great. I love it. Thanks, man. Hey, man, how's it going? That's a killer beard, dude. Killer, do you like my joke there? Anyway. So can I ask you in a few short words what music is to you?
Expression.
Expression and emotion, I love this. This is really, really cool. Do you know why? Because these things represent exactly what music means to us. Right? To us, music is storytelling. It was music that told us exactly what Luke Skywalker was feeling in this moment. It was music that told us exactly what Jack and Rose were feeling in this moment. And it was music that told us exactly what Marion Crane was feeling in this moment. Now, storytelling applies really, really well to a fighting game. Why? Because we have a narrative structure. Here's what I mean. 2 characters enter. The round begins. They beat the shit out of each other. And the round ends. That there is our story. That's our narrative structure, right? Now, I want you to think of that like a scene in a film. There are many moments there that you could choose to accentuate emotionally with music, but the art comes from choosing the right moments. Now, interactive music, the art in interactive music, is choosing the right gameplay moments to change the score. Now, I want you to think of the interactive music system in Killer Instinct as like a pop song, where we give the control of the structure over to the player. So the structure being verse, chorus, etc. We give the control of that over to the player. Now, to further demonstrate this, we're going to talk through a single round of Killer Instinct to see what happens. The first fighter enters, and the round begins. The music gives that player an entrance. It also sets up the mood for the impending battle. Now the second character enters, and you'll hear the music build. Now, did everybody see that beat when he jumps down there and it changes, right? That's the music system. Each character has a different intro animation, and they're all different lengths, which we love, don't we, audio people? So the system changes into that build on the beat to make it sure that it's like the same on every level, right? So anyway, we've got our two characters here. The round begins. All right, boom, the fight's on, yeah? At this point, we change to what we call our normal state of music. But I want you to think of our normal state as like the verse of our pop song. But we've split the individual components that make up a verse into individual files. So what I mean by that is we have stuff like little interludes. Right, we have part A's of the verse. Right, and then we've got like part B's of the verse. And we have like different riffs and things. Cool? And we arrange these individual components to form a verse in Y's here. Now, each one of those components has multiple variations. And this way, we get hundreds of different combinations. So the verse is always slightly a little bit different. The goal of this is to give every single player some cool music to fight along to, even if they're a beginner. But of course, Killer Instinct isn't really for beginners. Well, I mean, people really want to, get good at fighting games and things as such. And you've all played Killer Instinct, you've played fighting games before, so you'll understand the combo system. Combos, essentially, for those who may not know, is about linking individual moves together to form a combo, right? So you link your punches and kicks and things together to form a combo. Now, despite what you might have seen in that awesome match between Jed and I at the start of the game, those combos are actually really difficult to pull off. So we wanted to reward the player who succeeds at that. We wanted to give them a reward. Any player that successfully pulls off a 15-hit combo or more is rewarded with the first 8 bars of our chorus. Right? Now, during those 8 bars, if that player successfully pulls off another high-hit combo, they're rewarded with the second 8 bars of the chorus. If they pull off another high-hit combo in that, they're rewarded with the third 8 bars of the chorus, and so on and so on. Now, what does this do? Well, this exposes the interactive music system to the player. It pulls the interactive music system out of the shadows, where it normally sits trying to pretend that it's scored like a film, right? And puts it square into the player's lap, and they're aware of it. So to further kind of explain this, what I'm going to do is kind of set up how this works, right? We're going to do this in Y's, just for the sake of demonstration purposes. We're going to start with our verse, And then we're going to say that one of the characters has done a hi-hat combo. We're going to go into the chorus, and they're going to fail to do another hi-hat combo within those first 8 bars. You'll hear the music drop back down into the verse. Let's try that. Oh, sorry. Here we go. Come on. So verse. Chorus. It failed. Back down into the verse. Let's do that again, but this time the player's going to successfully produce another 15-hit or higher combo within those first 8 bars, and you'll hear the chorus linked together. Yeah. Cool? Makes sense? Now here's a little bonus for everybody playing at home there. The observant audio people of you there might know that we have something little kind of sneaky and magical going on there, right? So if you've got a verse in a dance song, and it's going 1, 2, 3, 4 with a kick drum. Then you have a chorus, which also has 1, 2, 3, 4 with a kick drum. We want to make sure that chorus punches in nice and hard. The best way to do that is to kind of take the kick drum away a little bit. But of course, how do you do that when you've just got 2 segments, right? Well, there's a sneaky little trick going on here. The observant of you will know that here in the combo, if you see in this section here, I don't know how well you can see that from there, we have 2 kick drums. You can see that with the big square things there. No loudness jokes, please. I know it looks like a block of cheese. Right, you hear those 2 kicks? But when we go from our verse into the chorus, we hear those kick drums disappear. Right? Everybody kind of get that? It's a little bit hard to hear in the room here. But anyway, those first 2 kick drums in my block of cheese that you had there before, well, they're inverted. They're exactly the same samples from the verse, but we've inverted them. And Jed, what happens when we put 2 sounds across to the other and one's inverted?
It cancels each other's out.
It cancels each other out. So we have this magical disappearing kick drum every time the chorus triggers, yeah? Cool stuff, huh? Anyway, let's move on. So, back into Killer Instinct. You may have noticed that Killer Instinct is a bit of a busy game, right? There's lots of stuff going on, yeah? There's lots of stuff to pay attention to. Now, I don't know how well you can see here, but do you guys see this tiny little yellow bar? Do you see this yellow bar here? Everybody see that? Right here, this big long red bar is the player's health. This little yellow bar down here, right? That little yellow bar is actually really, really, really important. That little yellow bar can change the match. It's basically like a special meter. As the match goes on, depending on certain circumstances, that bar fills up. It's very important. So we don't know why it got so much little kind of screen real estate, though, but I guess everything is kind of competing, right? So if you can't have enough space on the screen, we need to find another way to make that bar stand out. Now, Jed here had a fantastic idea. Let's use music to make that little bar stand out. So I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about here. To make that bar stand out, we have mono layers of musical flourishes that can come in on top of the music. I'm just going to set one up here for you. And you'll hear it come through one side of the speaker. And that side. Is Ellie in here, by the way? Ellie Eastman? Are you Ellie? Shout out Ellie. She's not here. That's Ellie singing, by the way. Nobody knows Ellie. All right. So anyway, so that mono layer there, right, is attached to the player who has a filled yellow bar. And it plays on top of the music that's already playing. If that player, so what I mean by attached is that the player is over on this side of the screen. That means that piece of music there, that little flourish, is only playing out of that side of the speaker. If the player jumps over the other side and they swap, that layer crossfades over to the other beat. Right, you guys getting that? Yeah? If the second player also has a filled meter, then it fills out a little bit more. Cool, huh? So what does this do? Well, this slightly upsets the stereo balance, our stereo image. We have one side that has a little bit more information in it than the other. And what this does is subtly makes one side, where the character is, feel a little bit more powerful than the other side. Kind of cool, huh? All right. So anyway, following basic game design rules, you want to reward the player who figures out your system. If that player has a controller in their lap and they're going, well, if I push more of these buttons and the music changes and it gets more intense, what happens if I put it down? Right? You want to reward that person. You want to reward that player who tries to figure out your system and break it, yeah? Each level features a remix of each character or that level's original theme from 1994 that only plays if both characters put their controllers down for a set period of time. Now, if the players move, it jumps straight back into the verse. Cool, huh? So anyway, our players have been beating the living crap out of each other for a little while. And one has beaten the crap out of the other one more than themselves. Okay, so they end the match, right? But of course, this is a fighting game. You don't just end the match, right? You want to completely decimate your opponent. You want to beat the living crap out of them, right? You want to make them feel completely bad and never want to pick up the controller again. So the player has an option. If they import a special series of buttons at the end of a match at exactly the right moment, they're rewarded with this huge, epic, decimating ultra combo, which of course you'll all know from the original game, which looks like this. Right? Now he's dead, yeah? So with that moment, it's a special moment at the end of the round, and we wanted to try something that's a little bit interesting. I mean, the entire match we've got punch kick sound effects, and we've got music that sits in the background, so we wanted to try something that's a little bit interesting. We're looking around for different sources of inspiration, and we came across these amazing music levels in Rayman, where the visuals on screen reflect the music. So you see how the visuals are kind of matching the music, yeah? It's kind of really linked. It's really, really cool. So I thought, well, why not make our ultras musical? You guys enjoying that subwoofer there? Right. Now, pulling that off was really hard. Excuse me, gosh. So, how do we do that? Right, well, every single level has 50 hits. And think of these individual hits as like a scale that's kind of raising up. I can actually show you a couple here. So this are the ones for the level that we've been playing through. Oops. So that's hit number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, you getting what I'm saying? So constantly go up, right? So it's 50 of these per level. For those of you playing at home, that's 400 hits. Anyway, once we've got those 400 hits, we give each character a sequence. Here's what I mean. So this is a sequence. So Jago, the guy at the top there, his sequence, his meta sequence, might be hit number 1, hit number 4, and then hit number 8. Saber Wolf, on the other hand, might be hit number 1, hit number 5, and then hit number 9. Spinal, lastly, might be hit number 1, hit number 3, hit number 7, and then hit number 10. So this system selects these individual hits out and places them on every single punch and kick. And what this does is ensures that every character has a melody for their ultra combo. So this way, Jago's Ultra will always sound like Jago's Ultra, regardless of the stage, but it will be styled according to that level's music. Cool, huh? So anyway, what did we learn from this? What is next-gen audio?
Well, we thought that next-gen took away all the technical restrictions that we used to have on the previous consoles.
Was it? No, well said, my man. But of course, I think really, anything really creative or artistic requires careful restrictions.
That's right, Mick. It would be like thinking that using 300 tracks in Pro Tools will give you better sound, or having 300 toppings on your pizza will make a better pizza.
The thing is, though, finally, kind of, maybe, Next Gen allows us to choose what those restrictions are.
My name is Jean-Edouard Miclot, and I did the audio in Killer Instinct.
My name is Mick, and I made all the music for Killer Instinct. Thank you guys very, very much. So we've got about 15 minutes for questions. So if anybody has a question, I'd like to invite you up to the microphone here. The man at the back, Mark, would you mind just boosting up the room lights a little bit, just so we don't have any people trip over or anything? And while that's coming up, GDC has reminded me to tell you guys, after this, you're going to get a little email that will come into your phone. And it's like an evaluation form. If you wouldn't mind just spending 2 minutes filling that one out, it really helps GDC with selecting talks and things for the future. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah, just step right on up to the microphone, my man.
I'd love to hear any thoughts you might have about how the process was mixing all of the sound effects versus the music, since both of them, they have so much character. How do you balance that kind of challenge?
Right, that's true. When we started to work on tonal sounds, we thought that it was very complicated to get them in tune with the music. So Mick actually gave me one note. He used, like, across all the stages, the E minor scale.
Yeah, so it's funny. Musical people, we're musical people, right? All right, cool. So Jed here, my main sound designer man, everybody saw the Tesla things before, right? So it turns out that when we recorded the Tesla coil, it was at a B flat, right? And the music for Awkward Stage was in E. Oh gosh, really? Music people? Tritone, right? GDC. No, so what we had to do is basically give Jed a set of notes that would apply to any stage. And so the pre-planning was involved as to what key each piece of music is in. But yeah, generally with mixing, we had a ducking system. So we had a priority system with 4 levels. What was the priority system, Jed, number 1?
No, there was actually like 15 different priorities, yeah. But
block of
It's all
cheese.
automated, so yeah, you have in and outs, and the announcer has the biggest priority. The sound effects are the second one, and then after impacts, music, vocals, sort of things.
And that's the kind of thing.
So that's how we mix the game in real time.
Where's man? Did that answer your question okay? Yep, cool. Thank you, man. What's your question, dude?
My question is for you.
Thank you.
In terms of your your choices for genres,
Yep.
I was wondering what was going through your head when you were like thinking, like, did you ever want to go orchestral heavy or rock heavy, or because I know you're dealing with a lot of genres there. What was your sort of mindset or your thoughts on how you came about choosing the genres for the entire field?
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. No, great question. So, essentially, obviously, if you're familiar with the original Killer Instinct soundtrack, it's very varied. I mean, there's all sorts of different tracks. There's orchestral tracks, there's dance tracks, there's all that sort of stuff. So, it's quite varied. So, a lot of that information was already laid down. So, when we were doing Orchid's track, it was clear that that was going to be a dance track.
Oh, I see. So you're basing it off of
Yeah, pretty
the
much,
original.
yeah. The only one we had was Sadira, which is a new character. She was the Spider Queen that Jeb was shown before.
Right.
And Sadira I went through about 7 different versions on, just couldn't get it right. Couldn't find music that was like a Spider Queen, right? So I remembered this girl I knew in high school, and she was like a goth, and she was just obsessed with spiders and Marilyn Manson. So we ended up doing like this really heavy track. With singing and all that sort of stuff, which kind of fit. Just because it was kind of, fit the Spider Queen, right? Imagine, I don't know if you've seen the level, that was that spider one at the end
Right,
there.
yeah.
And imagine like she hangs out there with the spider assassins, they all sit around listening to Marilyn Manson all day. That was kind of it, yeah.
And if you remember the original teaser that we did for Sidira, she used to look like way more evil, and we changed the character design as well after. But
So the music affected the character design? Is that... Oh, good. yeah, no, seriously. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, so that was basically it. It just depends on the character. Killer Instinct is, obviously a fighting game from the 90s. It's based on this really fascinating thing that we've really lost with films and cartoons these days, which is the idea of characterization. Do you remember back in the day when every cartoon, there was a character that had the ability to solve any problem that came up? So Transformers is a good example and things like that. The characters would need to get across a gorge, and they'd need a bridge. But there was no bridge there, but they happened to have a Transformer that transformed into a bridge, right? And then they can get across. So it was all based on characterization. So the original Killer Instinct had like robots and lizards and wolf people and, all these sort of varied characters. So the music really needs to be different for every single character so we get that characterization across.
I see.
Really good question, man. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, buddy, how are you?
Doing well. How about you?
I'm good, thank you.
Great presentation.
Thank
I
you.
really enjoy you guys. We're a
Thanks a
big
lot.
fan of the game. I have questions for each of you. First, the sound designer. The technique that you had for when I noticed that you were recording your sounds, you had like a certain there's like a baffle of a filter of some sort, but what kind of microphones were you actually using to capture it? And what were your microphone placements for like just hitting for the chair? Did you have like a side mic set off here? And what were your techniques for that?
That was absolutely random. That's true. I don't even remember how I did it. I recorded 1,700 takes. So I usually I like to have like one that is pretty close and have one that is like medium distance and one that is like even further. I really like using MS microphones mid-side because it helps me after to decide if I just want to use the directional mic, the capsule, or have like a little bit more of ambient sound. It's actually really cool when you start distorting sounds because you also can apply just that effect to the left and right. It's just about like after experimenting. When you search for the impacts, I watched like a lot of movies and played a lot of video games, all the way back from Raging Bull that was designed by Frank Warner, and he did all those like super cool impacts that he deleted after. But those inspiration, I check like all the movies and video games, and we try to find like a unique style for Killer Instinct, and that was just like, looking for that happy accident to happen.
Very nice work. Mick, my question for you is, with the WISE implementation, you did that correct?
Yes.
Very, very great work. I was interested in how you actually were able to crossfade or implement the music for it to be transitional so seamlessly, as far as like having the old theme rather than having a new theme as soon as the player, you know, makes a jump? How were you able to like implement that besides the whole phase cancellation?
Yeah, no, that's really good. So, I mean, so a couple of points here, obviously. I'm based down in Melbourne, down in Australia. These guys are in Irvine, California, so there's a big distance there. It was Jed and myself were the main sound people on the team. We also had Zach Quiles at Microsoft. We had Boyd Post. We had Greg Allen.
Greg Allen,
we had, a couple of different people that helped us out and things along the way. But it was basically Jed and I. And what was great about that is that we pretty much had free reign to do whatever we liked. And that was great. It wasn't political or anything like that. We were just, let's make musical ultras. That'd be cool. And it was great, right? So anyway, I really, really, really strongly believe that if you're a video game composer and you're not implementing your own music, then that's really wrong. Because essentially you are handing something that you're spending time, energy, and money over to an assistant that has nothing better to do that slices up your sounds and music and things. So when you have control over that from the beginning, you're able to compose knowing about your implementation techniques. So with that session there, it's all built in one huge, massive session. So it's all mixed, mastered, all in one massive session. But there's kind of mastered and mixed and things in like 8 bars at a time. So when we do recording, it's really boring for the players because they kind of play 8 bars and then they stop. We do another 8 bars and then they stop and things like that, right? But with phasing and things, we didn't have any issues because of that. Wise is pretty handy with that sort of stuff. If you're familiar with Wise, you'll know about the pre-entry and post-exit. So we're just basically using that, yeah. What's great about this system is that everything we used is off-the-shelf stuff. I don't think we had any custom stuff. We had some scripting stuff for the musical ultras.
Yes.
But how they're being played back is all in
Combo
Wise.
breakers, all these days.
Yeah. So does that answer your question okay?
Yeah, and you wrote the lyrics and everything like that too.
Yes, yeah. Well, I had a little bit of help with the Orchids theme. Ali Edwards, who's the main vocalist on that theme, she wrote a lot of the lyrics, and that was a funny one. The track is called "Touch Me and I'll Break Your Face."
Yeah. I love that track. As soon as I heard it,
thank you.
Like...
The original Killer Instinct, obviously, Orchid was treated very overly sexualized and things, right? And there's a line in the original song which is like, touch me, feel me. And when we were talking about like the new Orchid and how we wanted her to come across, we took that, we don't want that touch me thing now, we want that touch me and I'll break your face. And then that became the whole, once we got that, the song kind of wrote itself. But I didn't feel comfortable writing lyrics for Orchid being male. So I wanted to give that to somebody else. So that was Ali. So she sung it and she wrote all the lyrics and things like that as well. But we did heaps of stuff, man. I mean, all the stuff in Sweden with the Swedish choir was written by Pontus Rufelt. He wrote all the translations and stuff. We recorded that there. 13 Viking men who were really into it and all that sort of stuff. We recorded it in a gymnasium in Gothenburg. What else, man? Yeah, we did strings in Manchester. We did brass in London. We did stuff all over the place.
So Mick raised a very good point here about the sexual aspect of Orchid, and like every character was treated very carefully. Like Thunder, you know, who's now like a Native American fighter, and the previous character was very racist. So like every character, we put a lot of efforts to make sure that it doesn't, that is not offensive for any.
Yeah, I mean, we had like representatives of the Nez Perce tribe that basically designed Thunder for us. All these war painters, traditional war paint and things. Jed actually went to Idaho for a couple of days and recorded singers and things out in the wilderness and stuff like that as well. So we were really fortunate to be able to have that access to that sort of thing. Yeah.
Nice. Bravo work, guys. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, man.
Cool.
Cheers,
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much. Yeah.
Does anybody have any other questions? I've got time for one more. Yeah, man. Thank you. Dun, dun. Da, 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 da.
This is an amazing talk. Going
Thank
to
you.
GDC Vault right after to watch it again because it's that good. So my question is, you have Fulgore coming out soon. I'm not sure how much you can talk about this, but any cool sound things or music things you guys are working on? Like,
Fulgore is that character?
I don't know anything about Fulgore. Do you know about Fulgore?
No.
So yeah, Fulgore's coming out later this month. What can we say about Fulgore, Jed? Because he is announced, I guess. What can we say about Fulgore?
We can't say anything now.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's very, very true to the original games.
Great.
So yeah, if you're a fan of heavy metal.
The only thing that I can say maybe is that we treated him with trying to blend the organic side into the electronic and the electronic into the organic. That was like side of the idea for Fulgore.
Yeah, there's lots of modular synth stuff and things that went into kind of designs and things. So Euro rack and stuff, distortion pedals.
Very special character, yeah. Very different from the other characters in the roster.
Again, tonal stuff is obviously got, I mean, he's a robot, so he's got lasers and all that sort of stuff, so tonal things again. Yeah, does that answer your question? Probably not.
That's fine. It's good.
End of March? What did they tell us? End of March, I think?
Yeah.
End of March, yeah, I think. Thank you, man. Okay, guys, I think that's... Oh, one more. All right, we will do one more just because I love your shirt.
So, I'm just curious, now that you've actually done the title, do you feel that you could have actually delivered this audio solution the previous generation, or do you feel that actually, no, it needed this generation for
That's
you
a really
to
good
actually
question.
deliver it?
Do we talk about trying to do it on 360?
Let's imagine, you say that. Let's imagine we try to make it to 360. We could, but yeah, we would have to downraise a lot of stuff, build a lot of content. The system would work. Yeah, the system would work. We would just have to, yeah.
Scale it back.
It's just great. I mean, it's really interesting. Like, I mean, I know we're talking about next gen and all that sort of stuff, but it's fascinating when you can have 500 mega sounds playing in a single level. Getting 500 mega sounds off a hard drive quick enough becomes the problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still not quite there, I guess. But yeah, I think so. I mean, the same again as creative restrictions. It wouldn't have been this game, but it would have been something else. And you just work with whatever creative restrictions you have.
But imagine like all the particles, you'll never get that on 360, all that stuff.
All the lighting's real time, all the, 60 frames per second, so there's a lot of visual stuff that's happening as well.
It wouldn't be just audio that would be affected, a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious about the audio side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
cool.
thank you.
Cool, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for coming to the talk, guys. I really appreciate it.